Today's video has been sponsored by Star Trek Fleet Command, the award-winning MMO that you can play for free right now on iOS, Android and PC by using the link in the description or by scanning the QR code on screen. Join in the celebrations for their 6th anniversary by taking part in special events led by the enigmatic Q, which are live until November 24th. Make sure to log in daily to get access to new rewards you can pick and choose from, with the damage-boosting Captain Nero awaiting any new player who logs in for 7 consecutive days. You can also unlock 3 unique variants of Q in his most memorable outfits from the next generation, and have them staff your ships as officers. Then use them to take on the new core content and unlock the brand new independent archives. This building is designed to streamline daily gameplay and even buff your progression. Also, use the code CRUSHERS to get 2 officers straight away and the jellyfish ship when you reach OP 18. Star Trek Fleet Command, available for free on iOS, Android and PC through the link in the description below or by scanning the QR code on screen. Hello everybody and welcome back to Spacedock. I'm Joanna and today we're looking at just what exactly range means in terms of space weapons. Surely it's infinite because there's no air to slow shots down and no ground to hit. Well, technically yes, but there's so many other things to consider. Range on the ground broadly comes from velocity because a faster round flies further, and accuracy, which can be modified a bit with guided projectiles and ways of hitting a larger area if you're not trying to be precise. In space, because it's a little bit empty, you can see and shoot at things from much, much further away. This means the effective range of a weapon is dependent on more elements, and can even be variable. As with on the ground, velocity is still the most important factor, though it has a close relationship with the ability of a target to evade incoming fire. There's an interplay here where at long range it's possible for a ship to see that they're under fire and move out of the way, but also a distance where that becomes impossible to achieve. The Expanse refers to this range as Hammerlock, but that setting also simplifies it down to just being a distance from the firing ship. But things aren't that simple, since that range also depends on the target's size and acceleration. A really big target is much easier to hit, as is one that accelerates extremely slowly, so the range of a weapon is kind of artificially extended against such targets. The opposite is true of small or fast targets. Let's do a basic worked example of this using the 125 meter long USSF Alan Shepard from the Lunar War. If it fires its railgun at the center mass of its sister ship, the USSF John Glenn, Glenn would need to move at least 62.5 meters to avoid it. This is simplified because obviously there's also turning and stuff rather than just going straight forward, but this is just a basic example. So at a range of 10 kilometers, the 10 kilometers per second velocity of the railgun means its shot crosses the gap in only 1 second. At best, Glenn can move 15 meters in that time. At worst, it can't even move 4, far below what's needed to avoid being hit. But increasing the range to 45 kilometers means Glenn dodges the shot in the 4.5 seconds before the railgun round arrives, but only at max acceleration with minimum propellant load. At its slowest, the safe distance becomes nearly 200 kilometers. But Shepard also has a laser. These work at light speed, and the photons from it can cross even 100,000 kilometers in 1/3 of a second. Glenn isn't avoiding that. In order to have even a chance, the laser would need to be at least 600,000 kilometers away. To put that in perspective, the moon is only 384,000 kilometers away. Now yes, these are all using realistic values for stuff, which sci-fi might not do, but they demonstrate the point, I think. So what does a kinetic weapon do to try to get a hit? Well, it leads the target, of course, putting rounds where the target is expected to be, just like when Bobby predicted the Peller's repeated dodges in the same direction. But what if the target doesn't evade in the same direction, or moves by a different amount, or rotates? then you might have just missed again. So at enough distance, things turn into a cloudy game of probabilities, of randomly shooting where the target might move to as it randomly picks a direction to evade in. If the distance closes, then the probabilities lean in favor of the shooter. If the gap widens, it turns in favor of the target. But it's also a battle of endurance, of who runs out of ammo or propellant first and gives up the fight. One of the ways kinetic weapons can bend probabilities in their favor is to use proximity effect warheads. Obviously, there's no blast waves possible in vacuum, but you can use sub-munitions, depending on the size of the original round. The bigger the round is, the more mini ones you can stuff into it. The smaller size of the sub-munitions may not be as effective on hit compared to the entire main round, but it's better than nothing. And if the goal is to damage fragile exterior systems like radiators or sensors or big laser lenses, it might be enough, especially if there's a lot of hits. Which brings us to the effectiveness of a hit on target. Kinetic weapons don't lose effectiveness over range because there's no air to slow them down, but they also might not hit anything worth hitting. This of course depends a lot on setting and ship design and whether or not you specifically aim at weak points or center mass, so I won't dwell on it too much. This non-change in effectiveness of hit doesn't apply for energy weapons, despite their incredible velocities. Lasers spread out over time due to diffraction, and particle beams spread out due to electrostatic and thermal bloom. Both of these are bad because spreading the energy of a beam out over a wider area makes it less effective. Over a long enough distance, it might not even be able to do damage at all, making those crazy light-second ranges a lot less scary. They can hit, but won't hurt. It depends on the laser though, and even a tiny bit of slow erosion over a long time can eat through a spaceship's armor. Assuming of course that the laser can keep that aim point. At extreme distances, there's a lot of things that can lower the accuracy of any aiming system to the point of practical unusability. For one, whatever system you're using to turn the weapon around might not have the exquisitely fine control needed to point where it needs to, or its movements cause the weapon to minutely bounce and wobble around. This is called jitter and applies to sensors as well. Now, this lack of fine control can be countered with control moment gyroscopes, the same tech used on space telescopes to aim with the entire vessel. But then equally, there's all the other things on the vessel jittering the weapon, the vibrations from a rocket engine, a different turret turning into position, someone inside slamming a hatch. Fortunately, there are some tricks you can do to improve on this. Lasers can have adaptive optics that alter their shape, particle beams can potentially adjust their aim magnetically or electrostatically, and kinetics can have guided projectiles. That last one is easy in an atmosphere where you can just change course aerodynamically, but in space that's not an option. Instead, you just bring some propellant along on the round like it was a mini spaceship. You don't even need full thrusters for this, just something that pops off one at a time to nudge things the right way, like on this KKV. Wait a minute, that's a missile! And yes, guided missiles are the inevitable endpoint of any discussion into weapon range in space combat because they can counter any evasion. Well, kind of. It's still a battle of probabilities if fired on the edge of a missile's range, but if it was fired early, then it's just a waste of a missile. They're not cheap like bullets. The counter-argument to a missile is that they can be shot down, which is true, but they can do their own evasion to try to avoid that, though this comes at the cost of propellant, so they can only dodge for so long before running out. This is why missiles would need to have an extreme closing velocity to limit how long they spend in range of point defense weapons. This can already be a matter of seconds for kinetic point defense, which is one of the reasons they're probably not going to be very effective without using proximity effect rounds or submunitions, which is a great opportunity for cool vibes-based stuff like Battlestar Galactica's flak fields. Or just use a laser or anti-missile missile, which are going to have a much higher chance of hitting the target. Though you better hope such systems don't get overwhelmed by missile spam. The last modifier to throw on this pile is the combo of stealth and electronic warfare, which can dramatically reduce the effective range of any weapon system simply by making it impossible or at least very hard to find a genuine target. You can't shoot what you can't see, and that goes for missiles too, from both them tracking a target and being tracked. So if you don't like those massive range advantages lasers have and want big guns duking it out in visual range combat, then unreliable sensors are the way to go. As we can see, there are a lot of modifiers on top of velocity when defining what range means in space combat. It also depends on the target and what they're doing, how good sensors and aiming systems are, and if you can even get a bead on a genuine target in the first place. Though since it's such a complicated melange of variables, it's possible to find any flavour of setting you want within it. You can support Spacedock by joining our Patreon, where you can get our frigate and spacefighter design reference books. Alternatively, you can support us directly through YouTube by becoming a channel member. Thanks to our supporters, and thank you for watching.